Hey guys, welcome back. I am showing you a crypto update from Mr. Will Barney. He does such a great job that I'm just going to play a little short part of his pretty long video, which I will link below, but he does a really good job updating us on what's going on. We know today's news that the SEC, I guess that mess that was done a long time ago is officially publicly done. Exciting. What's going to happen to the price of crypto? Nobody knows. Maybe it'll go up a couple of cents till the next thing. Anyway, it should be a snowball effect, so get excited. I'm gonna play Will Barney. I've got screen share on, and we are going to show our update. Talk about it at the end.
All right, I want to start first off with this particular slide. This is from the U.S. debt clock. We usually talk about these when we do these calls because there's a lot of information being shared here that is meant for the people's consumption so they can understand where we're going. The American super cycle, the golden age of wonders. Now, you've heard President Trump talk about this being the golden age and the golden age of America. And of course, this is being reiterated here on the debt clock. One of the things I wanted to point out here recently is you can see here we have future USA Treasury dollars being reflected. No longer on the debt clock are you seeing Federal Reserve notes. That's been removed, and now you're seeing future Treasury dollars. So that's a very good indication that we have new money coming. Here's another picture of that. The persistence. Scott Pressler posted this. Wow, the U.S. debt clock has now been updated to not only include Doge, but also savings per taxpayer. The Doge savings is $175 billion, and per taxpayer $1,558. Of course, that's been actually a little higher than that. It's now over $200 billion that is saved, but that's what it was at the time of the screenshot. Our Commerce Secretary, which is Howard Lutnick, has been doing a series of interviews talking about various steps that the Trump administration is taking to bring greatness back to America. And I've got just a short video here about some of the things that he says, and we discussed this previously, but let's listen to what he says.
How about no tax on tips? How about no tax on overtime? How about no Social Security? How about all those things? These are the kind of thoughts that will change America. I know what his goal is. No tax for anybody who makes less than $150,000 a year. That's his goal. So that's what I'm wondering.
There you go. So going for a tax-free economy, we're all looking forward to that. We do know that that's where we're headed. There's some other statements that we're going to play of him a little bit later about where we are going. But I want to go to the White House here. This is a plan for establishing the United States Sovereign Wealth Fund. This was done right at the end of, was it the end of January? No, it's the 3rd of February. I don't have my glasses on. 3rd of February when they actually did this. So establish the Sovereign Wealth Fund. I want to talk about a little bit about this tonight because I think this is pivotal to understand the fundamental changes that are taking place in our country. What is a sovereign wealth fund? The sovereign wealth fund is where the country utilizes its best assets. These can be in-ground, they can be the land itself, they can be water, they can be any number of resources that the government has access to. What is the purpose of sovereign wealth fund is to take those assets and monetize them in a way that produces income for the benefit of the country. This is not necessarily on an individual basis, but if the country has income, it doesn't need to tax its citizens. So this is the precursor of where we'll get to in terms of having no tax. So very important to understand the sovereign wealth fund. Let's go to the next slide here. Exclusive deal maker Michael Grimes is expected to lead the U.S. Sovereign Wealth Fund. He worked at Morgan Stanley. This guy's been in banking and commerce for a very long time. He understands what it means to make a business run and how to how to generate profits. He's working in the Commerce Department, so he'd be working under Secretary Howard Lutnick, who we just heard from, to manage the Sovereign Wealth Fund. Now, the country has a lot of assets. Some of these assets you don't really think about, but there's millions of acres of land and there's millions of acres of offshore land. So that extends from the land itself and goes out into the coast, into the waters, whether it be the Pacific, the Atlantic, the Gulf waters. There's a series of miles there from shore that belong to the country. Now, this can be used for offshore oil drilling, in which case oil drillers will sign a lease with the government, and when they pump oil, they pay royalty on that lease. So that generates income for the country. So we're starting to see the country work from just taxpayers paying into an endless pit of money that goes out the door, and DOGE is finding where that's going, to turning it into a business that can actually generate income, and we can reduce the burdens on the individual taxpayers themselves. Very huge what is happening here. You're going to hear more about it. In this next article here, 9 Guiding Principles for U.S. Sovereign Wealth Fund. This is from Forbes, and there's multiple things there, but I'm going to touch on 2 of them right here. Okay. Number 1, monetize underutilized federal assets. As I said, millions of acres of land. There's all kinds of opportunity to use those resources for the economic well-being of the country. A strategic opportunity, if done right. The idea of a U.S. sovereign wealth fund is ambitious, but not without precedent. Many of the world's wealthiest nations, such as Norway, China, Saudi Arabia, and Kuwait, have used these to secure economic futures. Within the United States, like Alaska and North Dakota, they've demonstrated how resource revenues can be transferred into long-term financial assets. Now, what's interesting is the former governor of North Dakota, who was doing this in his own state, is now the head of the Department of Interior. What does that mean? It means he's in charge of all of these lands. That is his resource to manage. So he's taking what he's done in North Dakota, he's bringing it now to the whole country so we can maximize the available resources. And this is going to be tremendous for the economic forecast going forward of the country. So we're really excited about these things taking place. This is about moving from a model of taxation to a model of income producing where outside money is coming in to support the country. This also falls in line with tariffs, and we'll talk a little bit more about tariffs later, but that is also an outside revenue source to the country. And that's what the president and his administration is trying to do is to go from what we call the IRS, the Internal Revenue Service, over, he wants to change that to an outside revenue source, and that's coming. So this is fantastic what we're seeing here. Let's move to Department of Treasury and take a look at what they're doing. U.S. Department of Treasury withdraws from the network of central banks and supervisors for greening the financial system. What does this mean? This means they're getting out of the central bank system. The Treasury doesn't want to be involved in it anymore. Okay. This is starting to become a separation between Federal Reserve and other central banks and the Treasury. Treasury saying, we don't want to be part of that network. We don't want to be involved in these debt notes that are creating greening, right? Greening meaning producing money. And they don't want to produce money with debt anymore, right? We need to find other sources of revenue, other savings that we can utilize to balance budgets. So this is a big deal that the Treasury is doing this. The reason for this is a precursor to what will be coming, and that is that the Treasury will one day take over the monetization of the money. In other words, they will be the printers of money rather than going to a central bank to receive that money. So you'll see that coming down the road as things unfold. On the Federal Reserve website, there's all kinds of interesting things we find here. The one I wanted to point out today is ISO 20022. Implementations rescheduled for July 14th for the Fedwire Fund Service. Okay, what does this mean? As of 18 months ago and all the way up until this past January of 25, the goal was to have all banks compliant with ISO 20022 by January 1st. However, when January 1st came, the banks weren't compliant. They moved to that date to March, actually March 14th, which is tomorrow. And now they realize they're not going to hit that. So now in February, they realized, okay, we're not going to make that. Actually, it was going to be March 10th, excuse me. So they moved from March 10th all the way to July 14th. What does this mean? It means the banks are not yet ready for this specification. So let's talk about this. What is ISO 20022? I have commented about this in the past in regards to cryptocurrencies, but essentially what this is, it's a specification for how information is transmitted on financial networks. So what you're going to see is this is a higher specification, and it allows complete transparency, and it is compliant with blockchain standards. So we're now moving all the banks into alignment with blockchain standards. That's what we're looking for. Now, not all cryptocurrencies that claim to use blockchain are compliant with this standard. So it's important that you understand which ones are and are not. And we'll actually talk about that here in a minute because I've got some slides to show. Here we go. Let's take a look at this one. This is the list of compliant coins. These are cryptocurrency coins for 2025, and there are 8 of them. Look at the first one, XRP. Digital payment protocol designed for fast and cost-effective cross-border transactions. XRP has been leading this space. It's currently still embroiled in a lawsuit with the SEC that's kind of held it under wraps for a bit. However, we do see that going away very soon. Expected to be dissolved this year in terms of the lawsuit that's going to allow XRP to move forward. Why is XRP important? Because it has the capability to be that in between currencies. In other words, its function is to really handle cross-border or transfers between currencies. In the past, whenever you did a currency conversion, there would always be a litany of fees that were associated with this. And I know several international companies, I dealt with some of them, that were paying anywhere from 4%, I think was the lowest I saw, somewhere as high as 10 to 12%, and they didn't even realize they were paying that high a fee. This the bank had hit it in the conversion rate. So why is this important? Because Ripple has the ability to move from dollar to peso or dollar to pound and do it in seconds or a fraction of a penny, right? Not even a penny. So you're talking about very cheap, inexpensive movements. The country of Japan has announced that they are going to be utilizing XRP for all payments in and out of the country, all cross-border payments. All 50 nations of Africa are working on this to use XRP for cross-border payments. So you're going to see XRP become a much talked about cryptocurrency because it has a functionality that is serviceable to the world. And the key here is it has the utility to provide fast, efficient payments. And this paves the way to change the way we do payments. Like most of you are probably, if you're working a job, you're going to get a paycheck every 2 weeks. Why do you get paid every 2 weeks? Why not every day? Why not once a week? Why not some more frequent time? Well, the reason is because payments are clunky. Payments are expensive in our current system. So as we move to blockchain type technologies, we get to where we can do fast, efficient, and cheap, right? This could change entirely the way payrolls are done in the future and the way money's dispersed to workers.
I'm going to skip ahead a little bit and then I'll put the whole video below because this does have a lot of good information in it. So we're going to skip ahead a little bit.
To this person, how do I know it's going to get there? There's all this fear about it. There's going to be some uncertainty going forward as we move into a new financial system. So this association is going to be putting together advertisement pieces that are informational so that they can share information about how people can utilize technology, how they can become more comfortable with doing payments in the digital domain. So very big deal. I found it very interesting that again, they chose a Ripple person to head that. Okay, probably not an accident there. Here's another Ripple executive. This is the CTO of Ripple, David Schwartz, and he's talking about payments. And let's listen to what he says. This is very important.
No matter what. That is a given. We had a revolution in the physical delivery of goods with the shipping container, which changed globalization, started globalization. We had a revolution in the delivery of information with the internet. But what we don't know is what is the TCP/IP of money? What is the shipping container of value? We don't know that yet. There's going to be one, though. That is a definite. And that's going to bring changes. And what I also want to get through is that one of those changes that I foresee and that I think is important is that the size of payments are going to shrink, drastically shrink. Many of you people here probably have a job and you probably get paid twice a month or every 2 weeks. Well, why is that? You probably pay bills once a month. Well, why is that? It's because payments are expensive and clunky. But if payments were cheap and simple, then those frequencies could go up. Money could be streamed at you while you're working. You could stream money to your landlord to pay for the place where you stay. Now, I know those sound dumb, and I'll be blunt. Yeah, they are. And I'll tell you, like, if we were talking about email in the late 90s and you said to me, like, what are people going to use email for? I probably could not have given you the examples that is on everyone probably here, probably has a cell phone, probably has email on it, and probably has hundreds of messages that look nothing like none of that could I have predicted. If you'd asked me if the internet had enough bandwidth in the year 2000, I would have said, yeah, it has plenty of bandwidth. Well, could I have imagined Netflix and on-demand video? That's ridiculous, right? Like the cost of bandwidth is too high for that. But the internet drove the cost of bandwidth down to zero. And if the cost of payments go down to zero, the world is going to change. And I'm going to explain some of the ways that I think that's going to change and what that means.
Okay, so he's given us a heads up here that we can do things on a more smaller transactions on a more frequent basis because it's going to be very cheap, very efficient, and it doesn't cost us much to do it. So,
all right, I'm going to end it right there as far as the screen share. And I'm just going to recommend you watch the whole video. It's really good. I also recommend this book, Think and Grow Rich. Good book. That's why you get a green screen. Anywho, just wanted to give you that update, and I'm going to make a couple more videos today. Everybody have a blessed day. Buy some XRP.